H. Decriminalized Activities. 1. Illicit drugs. This subject raises the eyes and the hatred of most just by viewing the words. Therefore, the individualist requests special care of the reader in considering the individualistic reasoning before making a judgment, while remembering that it is the underworld itself that wishes this activity to remain illegal for its sole benefit. The illicit drug market in the U.S. alone is over $65 billion per year and $300 billion globally. Whether legal or illegal, people will still engage in this activity. Therefore, the aim is to find the most constructive way to handle the subject. To deem something illegal only opens the door for crime, which brings with it violence and all of the other related corruption. The individualist believes that all drugs should be legalized for a six-fold purpose. 1. All sales can be monitored and the money put into the Populus government and not into the pockets of foreign governments or criminals. 2. If the individuals are so senseless as to abuse drugs leading to their death, they were not of strong enough caliber to be among the individualistic society in the first place, and their death removes their weakness from it. 3. The very act of making a substance illegal creates a taboo and a black market around it. Prohibition of alcohol is the common example. Therefore, making something illegal actually increases interest in the substance. 4. No government or any other individual should have any control over the personal decisions of any individual, so long as those decisions affect no other individual outside of the decision maker. For example, suicide and murder are both the decision to kill, however one involves an exterior individual. Thus, the first should be legal, the latter illegal. The individualists place this much more responsibility in the hands of the individual, where it has always belonged, as a natural result of the increased freedom and independence of the individualistic society. 5. Legalization removes a huge influx of criminals out of the taxpayer system and makes them taxpayers themselves. Thus, there is a threefold gain in populist profit. A. Less justice system influx means less spending, hence more money. B. A once underworld business becomes a populist tax-generating system. C. Drug industry-related criminals themselves become taxpayers instead of costing tax by sitting in prison. 6. Legalization lessens violence associated with the industry and causes a drop in crime and crime organizations, as well as increases social safety and user safety. Many believe that the common illicit substances are no more dangerous to the human mind and body than are alcohol and nicotine. The regulations of these substances, if legalized, would be no different than alcohol, sold in state stores to people 21 or older. Since making illegal a large portion of these substances in 1914 by the Harrison Narcotics Act, the underworld has marketed an image of terror around these substances to keep them illegal for their own control and profit. This madness of making illegal some things as hazardous to an individual for that individual's own good is a cover-up for the control of a market for profiteering purposes. For instance, if gasoline is lethal to drink, why is it not illegal to drink it? But saffron, a flavoring of original root beer, was supposedly found to cause liver cancer in rats only after feeding them massive doses. Thus, it was made illegal to consume. However, not much was said about how it was used to create MDMA, the designer drug called ecstasy. The individualists believe that a warning on a product is all that is necessary. If one wishes to ingest a potentially lethal substance, it is their freedom of choice to do so, and the repercussions of one's own free choice is how one learns. Else, the society as a whole must hasten to make fire illegal to touch. 2. Prostitution. No different than the previous subject. It is another subject often kept out of sight and out of mind. It is for this very reason, ignoring reality, that a global market of horror has risen up, with human beings actually being sold into slavery and shipped about worldwide. The individualist does not ignore such topics and subjects them to analysis for the truth, no matter how difficult it is to ponder. Prostitution has existed since history has been recorded. It obviously is not going anywhere and must be recognized as a fact of human existence and dealt with accordingly. Therefore, the most constructive methods must be drawn up to coexist with the phenomena. Research in countries such as Sweden show that repressive measures do not result in the reduction of prostitution. They merely shift the practice from one area to another. There are arguments for and against any subject. Either side chosen always has pros and cons. However, The repression of this practice has been attempted since history began and has yet to succeed. Thus it has proven futile, and now the alternate argument must be considered. The individualist sees this practice as simply a matter of free choice. If any individual wants to sell sex and another wants to buy it, as long as none is harmed and it is done in a discreet fashion, then there is no social harm. Thus, there is no social injustice, therefore there is no crime. The question of morals is strictly between one's own self and one's God. If one desires to perform this act, it is their body and freedom of choice to do so. Hence, the individualists find difficulty in calling this a crime, but find ease in calling it amoral. However, personal morality is no grounds for incrimination or law, simply grounds for self-shame. If legal and regulated, prostitutes and their clients will be safer and sexually transmitted diseases will be lessened. As above, the business will be a $12 billion per year tax generating system, and an influx of individuals would be removed from the penal system. If written law is allowed to govern morality, one could be forced to dress a certain way, behave a certain way, and live life in a certain way. One's actions, however immoral, simply display to the rest of the population the level of learning and understanding of that individual. Thus, law cannot punish ignorance, for rarely is the ignorant one responsible for being ignorant. If law is to punish ignorance, then the entire current schooling system must be immediately incarcerated. I. Individualistic legal simplicity. The state of having all laws and punishments simplified to such an extent without sacrificing any order, wherein every individual has the entire code memorized, is called individualistic legal simplicity. This statute will be simple enough to fit on a reasonably sized plaque or set of plates and will be placed in all populous facilities and most homes. Complexity of law only assists, supports, and encourages corruption. Once any restriction is set upon man by law, it immediately creates a black market and all the evils connected thereto. Law's only right is to establish reasonable guidelines for the individuals of a society to use to get along. It is not to be used as a controlling force or a concealing force. Knowledge alone allows the people to live in harmony, with laws only being required as a background framework. Knowledge alone is sufficient to guarantee all liberties, and it is awareness and knowledge freely shared that will lead to a free and just society, not endless doctrines of laws.